allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a roll call, Ms. Tully, please.
Mr. Galley.
Here.
Mr. Lockren.
Here.
Mr. Mazza.
Here.
Mr. Patel.
Here.
Mr. Ritchie.
Here.
Brett Savadon absent. Ms. Tully here.
Chairman Brent Savadon is absent, so I'm subbing as chair tonight. We have a review of the agenda. Any additions or deletions or motion?
I'd like to make a motion to delete item G1 from the agenda. Because in our previous meeting, this item was voted down because we felt it was not an addition to the ordinance, that the township supervisor and the board already have the right to not select a non-resident if they wish not to. So all this is preventing maybe some future administration of picking somebody in that vein.
Support.
Mr. Ritchie has a motion, and we have support. You want to do a roll call on that, Ms. Tully?
What was the
Sure.
G1? Okay.
Mr. Galley.
Yes.
Mr. Lockren.
Yes.
Mr. Mazza.
No.
Mr. Patel.
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie.
Yes.
Chairman Savadon absent. Ms. Tully, yes.
So does that passes the agenda as amended?
No, basically that
Already
deletes that
moved it?
item, so now I guess I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended with the deletion of item G1.
Support.
We have motion and support for the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion as the amended agenda carries. Public comment for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to comment on something that's not on tonight's agenda?
Cheryl Janakis, 8990 Woodlawn Avenue. Seeing as you took this off of the agenda, I'm going to tell you what we think. I'm before you tonight about the denial of the hearing of the proposed amendments to Section 1402 and Section 608. The zoning ordinance. I, along with many others, have listened to the last 3 meetings or attended. We've heard so many excuses why we should not have a public hearing on this matter. The accomplishments and character of this member are irrelevant because it has nothing to do with him. He stated he was baffled by the language but voted against a hearing anyhow. There have been so many excuses, including Mr. Ritchie stating that this is a campaign optics move and stating that this is a furious meaning to what's happening. This is all irrelevant gibberish that has nothing to do with the proposed hearing. It is an insult to our supervisor and what he's trying to accomplish, along with the residents and our wishes. I'm also reminding you that your planning commission's job is not to question motivation, but to do your due diligence serving the residents of Independence. Mr. Savadon stated several times his proposal is bad governance. I beg to differ. He stated by state law, no member can be on the Planning Commission Board, which is a recommending body. The Michigan Enabling Act does not state that a non-resident can be on the ZBA, which is not a recommending body. This loophole needs to be closed, along with the proposed amendment to Section 608C to rectify the Planning Commission having sole authority over approval of site plan extensions. He also stated that it was redundant and a waste of time. This amendment would also eliminate any redundancy. It's reprehensible that he would state that this is a waste of time. So here we have 3 board members holding this hearing and amendment hostage, one of which should have recused himself. his vote basically stopped our public hearing. We have a non-resident circumventing a public hearing on whether we should have a non-resident on the ZBA. This loophole was found and implemented under the watch of the interim supervisor, whose rating was 18% of the residents' vote in the election. This member was also appointed as a liaison for the whole term, as versus the traditional one-year term. These officials were not elected by the residents, including the unelected interim supervisor, who was for higher density. Hypothetically, if our current supervisor resigned and the same fiasco happened again, we would be right back in this situation. You have voted against this public hearing, have went against the people you swore to serve, and against all recommendations to set this public hearing. You have not done your due diligence. Your only study that was implemented was your opinion amongst yourself, some of which I have voiced above. There are over 36,000 residents in Independence Township. Every one of us deserves a vote in this matter. We deserve a voice. We are unhappy with the actions of few members of this recommending body, stating that they are just going to make this go away. It's not going to happen. We therefore are petitioning you to set a public hearing on this matter. And it's irreprehensible that you would take this off of the agenda. Totally. We will go as high as we need to. We will go to representatives. We will petition. This is going to happen.
Do you mind, can the chair ask you a question, ma'am?
Absolutely.
Is there a particular ZBA case that you have an issue with? I'm just curious.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Because of the member in question, I believe, I'd have to look at the statistics, but I think he votes no more than anybody else.
Absolutely not. It
Okay.
has to do with
And
going forward
are
with
you-
the residents of Independence
Are
Township.
you aware that the current supervisor has voted to appoint that said member every single time he's been up for appointment?
You are assigned for a consecutive term until your year ends on the ZBA, period. And that was by the previous
Which is-
supervisor, Mr. Fisher,
But
which is totally
the
wrong. We
current
have no
supervisor
say-so.
voted yes as well, is all I'm asking.
Pardon me?
Are you aware that the current supervisor voted yes in that question?
It's irrelevant
Okay.
now. This
All
is
right.
all irrelevant.
Those are all my
It's
questions.
not you
Thanks, ma'am.
guys, 6 guys. There are 36,000 people in Independence Township. We pay the taxes. We don't want
Right.
it.
I understand
And you
that,
can't make it go away.
and I'm here to
It's
protect the
not
majority of the
gonna go away.
citizens. Thanks, ma'am. Any other comment for things not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none. Okay, we have 2 public hearings tonight. What we'll do is let the consultants speak, hear a brief presentation from each petitioner, then we'll bring it up to the board, then we'll seek public comment on those items. So I'll call the first case, PC file number 2023-003. The petitioner is Leo Capital Investment LLC. Mr. Carlisle?
Thank you. The subject application is for a rezoning of the property that's on the west side of Sashabaw, south of Flemings Lake Road. It's the last remaining property in the Sashabaw East Crossings development, where you have Art and Jake's, you have the Culvers, you have Taco Bell, and you have Arby's, the hotel, and now the new surgery center. So this piece of property, I think it's about a 3-acre piece of property, is the last piece of property. It's an interior piece of property that is directly behind Culver's and Taco Bell, and Arby's for that matter, and fronts on the golf course. So the applicant originally applied for the property to be rezoned from C1 to C3. We wrote a review on that, which was attached to the memo review that I provided to you. I didn't feel the need to write a complete additional review. To simply provide you with an updated memo of my comments. My original review was very clear, I think, in terms of some of the issues that I think surrounding the property. First of all, we were concerned in the original review that the original request was from C1 to C3 rather than C1 to OS2, which is what the master plan calls for. C3 is highway commercial. It would have been a completely incompatible and unusual zoning category for that part of Sashabaw Road and unprecedented from that standpoint. The application was resubmitted from C1 to OS2. The reason being is OS2 permits by special land use the hotel, which is what the applicant is intending to build. However, our original understanding is that this was an application, because this was what was told to us, for planned rezoning overlay, so that it was going to be specific to the hotel, because that's what their intentions were. However, there was never any information or any indication on the application that their intent was to rezone it to PRO/OS2. There's another number of other issues that I have pointed out in my review regarding the application. They did submit a set of plans as if they were pursuing this as a PRO. So consequently, we reviewed the plans. And you may know, and you may recall, some of you who were on the commission at the time of Arby's, Arby's had to apply for a wetland permit to allow for the modification of a wetland that conveys drainage to an existing drainage pond that is in the rear part of this property that provides drainage for, and Jason probably can provide a little bit more information about that, but does provide drainage via easement for other properties in Sashabaw Crossing East. And the plan that was presented to us shows the prospective hotel constructed on part of the pond. It also shows it constructed over portions of the easement to which other properties are party to. So that raised an immediate concern on our part. The second thing is that with the Arby's application, we received because they required a wetlands permit from the township, probably from, I have to remember if they also required it from DEQ or Eagle at that time. But we had a wetlands report indicating that a good portion of the subject site could be potentially wetlands. There could be a substantial portion of that site that was wetlands, which I made the applicant aware of that in my previous review, that we have this report on file from a bona fide wetland consultant, and that this is something that was needed to be addressed. So that's a second item. The third item is they did provide us with in the previous application, we had no floor plans. We had previously seen floor plans in our discussions, but a lot of information in the previous application was omitted, so it did raise some questions. But one of the issues, one of the major issues associated with the site, and this is what this issue is related to, is parking. We already know that there is a challenge in parking in that area. We saw that when you reviewed the site plans for the surgery center and Art and Jake's. My understanding is Art and Jake's has become as successful as we thought it would be, and we just don't want the same circumstance to occur again, where you now permit a hotel that doesn't have enough parking. Their plans indicate that they don't have enough parking. Plus, they're showing 3,000 square feet of their floor plan as a restaurant. We've asked in our previous review to more description of the nature of that restaurant, and did not receive any response at that time. I think Brian has since learned that it's just the typical type of food service operation associated with a hotel, and it's just for hotel guests. But that was never made clear. In fact, the first time we asked, in our review meeting, we were told that, yeah, this would be open to the public. So obviously, that raised some significant concerns. So I still think that that bears some need for clarification in that particular regard. The other item is the mass of the building. They are presenting you with a plan that shows a 4-story building, which would be at least 1 story more than that's been previously permitted for like the Comfort Inn. And it's a very large building, very long and very massive in our impression, and one which we may hear from some residents that live across the golf course in terms of its somewhat imposing nature. So I raise that as a concern. We also commented on the parking layout and made some recommendations in a previous review that have not been addressed, about how they could perhaps make this a little bit more efficient. There's a lot of paving that only has single-loaded parking. We suggested that the building entrance is face the back of the restaurants. It would seem to me that the entrance to the hotel, would be better served by facing the golf course. If that were, that would be a better view, if indeed they can figure out how to situate the building in that manner. But the other issue that we've raised is the whole issue of the conflict with inherent golf balls. I mean, it's in the flight path of, we've had some concern, I think, regarding the Comfort Inn, and I think this might even be worse, and we've asked them to investigate whether that's gonna be a problem. But it can indeed be a potential problem with their parking lot completely exposed to golfers, to golf balls, and no protection being provided. I think the one thing I want to make sure, and I want the commission to be aware, they provided me with a series of responses to my previous review, and I found very little of this response to be acceptable. For example, when I raised the issue about the lack of parking, they indicate that they're going to seek a variance or seek other options to provide parking. Well, the only other option is to do shared parking, which is just not available. We know it's not available. We know what is occurring on this part of the, with the other developments there. And they're not gonna be able to get parking from Art and Jake's. They're not gonna be able to get parking from the surgery center. And I'd be pressed to say, how would they get parking from a hotel with whom they're competing with? So I didn't quite understand why they would make a response like that unless they're gonna shuttle people in from someplace else. So, not having enough parking is a problem. There were a few other minor things that we raised that could be addressed, but all in all, I find this application to be, unacceptable and problematic, needs to be completely rethought, and so consequently, I'm not recommending approval.
One quick question for you while you're up there. You mentioned 4-story. Is that just going off the height of the parapet, or am I missing something on the plans?
Oh,
3.
What's that?
3. We only allow 2 stories.
What's that?
We only allow 2 stories.
Well, I thought you said it was 4.
hey, you know what? It possibly
I
could
mean, the
be.
front parapet's extremely high.
It's-
Yeah,
it's the
it
total
could,
height is what they
I'd
go
have to go back, it could be 3, but still 3 exceeds our
Yeah.
height requirement, and it's,
I thought I heard 4. I could have heard wrong.
whatever the height of the building is in relationship to its mass is a real concern. It's a very, you look at the size of the building and the length of the building, and its lack of a sort of a compact design, and I think that's what makes it look, in my mind, potentially more
The
objectionable.
Comfort Inn is
So,
3.
yeah, excuse me
right?
for that.
Yeah, but it falls
It's the square
within
footage of the
the
footprint.
two-story limits.
I'd have to go
It's
look
really
at
the overall height is what they're exceeding, so.
Any pertinent questions, or we want to wait for Longhurst?
Just one question for
Sure.
Dick. So this is just a rezoning request, no site plan at all?
Well, their specific request on their application is for a hotel. Both Brian and I were under the understanding that they were applying for a PRO. They never provided any specific, because that's what was discussed, excuse me. That is what specifically was discussed with them originally.
To handle the deviations?
Pardon me?
To handle the deviations, you're
No,
saying?
to tie the rezoning to the specific use that they were intending.
Okay.
That's what our planned rezoning overlay does. So that's why they submitted the plans. We didn't, I mean, had they not requested a PRO, we wouldn't have been reviewing site plans. But they reviewed, and Jason received them too. And so that's why we reviewed the plans. But to me, I'm glad that they did, because it's very revealing to me what the intent is here. And it does speak to, and all of these items that I raise, to me, are pertinent to the rezoning, because we understand what the intent is. They've been very clear for the last several years in discussions what the intent is. The fact that they're proposing to build over a drainage basin, the fact that they're proposing to build over drainage easements, the fact that they may be located on a site that has wetlands, to me is pertinent to whether you should rezone the property. Because it's quite clear that the intensity of this site is what they're proposing, and all of these factors lead in to the basis of my recommendation.
And a site plan's not required then for a? for a
Not
rezoning?
normally for a rezoning,
Just
no.
wanted to clarify. That's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Longhurst?
Good evening. As Mr. Carlisle indicated, our review is based on site plan, so the bulk of the comments are really based on the layout and geometry that was provided. So I'll kind of streamline that in the presentation here tonight. But as he indicated, the presence of wetlands was a concern that was brought up in our report, and I actually brought a copy of the wetland delineation report from the Arby's site. And there was a wetland that extended up to the shared property line and continued on, but how far it continues, wasn't mapped out at that time. The report does indicate that that wetland that was on Arby's is regulated by the state of Michigan, so there is definitely a potential that that could extend onto this site and would need to be further evaluated as that moves forward. And then also, we commented on obviously the regional basin there that serves all of the properties to the south and this site, along with the modifications that they appear to be proposing, but the details weren't mapped out on the plans. We just noted that there could be potential conflicts there for the modification of the basin, the impacts that the site would have on that. And then there's also several other drainage courses from the properties that front Sashabaw that go across this property into that basin. So their on-site infrastructure is gonna have to pick those up, route them around, whatever the proposed improvements are, and get them back into the basin there. So that's all detailed out. From a water and sewer standpoint, the utilities are there to serve the site, so we commented on that. And then we also made some recommendations to look at pedestrian connectivity with the pathway out on Sashabaw. They have proposed a pathway that kind of follows the northern drive approach out, but how that pathway ties into the actual hotel and how pedestrians would get from there to the front of the hotel wasn't mapped out at this stage. But again, our comments were really based on site plan and not the rezoning aspect of it, so. And that's it.
One comment for Jason.
Sure.
And this could be Dick or the applicant, but I'm trying to look at Google Earth and the site plan they gave us. Are we sure that they have development, they have site plan over the pond? 'Cause
They've
it looks
got
like it's fairly close to the golf cart path.
Yeah,
so.
the plans that were provided show the 50-foot setback line, and I can just point it out here. Here, that's the 50-foot line there.
Okay.
I think they've got some additional sheets that they might be able to share, with the topographic survey and other things to really expand on that.
You're saying the 50-foot setback from the pond?
That's
that
what
what
it's, I think it's labeled as a 50-foot,
Is that our requirement?
minimum water pond setback.
Isn't our is our requirement 50, or is it, it's usually 25, right? I'm just trying to fact find here.
I think they're calling it a water body, so it'd be 50.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Thank you.
For Mr. Longhurst? All right, thank you. The petitioners here? I don't know if you guys want to do, just say
Some
a few brief
presentation.
words to maybe clear some of this stuff up before I open a public hearing. I mean, up to you. Just your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Encore Patel. I'm the owner of Leo Capital Investments. We've been in the hospitality industry for 30 years in the downriver area, and we've been in contact with Brian and Mr. Carlisle for the last 3-4 years in regarding this property and seeing a good fit for a hotel. We've brought in a brand as well, nationally recognized, called Hyatt Place, which is a brand that's really good in terms of to this market that can provide guests in terms for the Pine Knob Music Theater that we have here as well. There's a lot of not many hotels in a 5-mile radius, and we thought it would be a good situation to have a hotel here that can accommodate those guests as well for those concerts and venues, especially during ski resort season as well. So that was the overall approach that we had when we were looking for building a hotel site here. And we've been working through the last couple of months on revisions and zoning overlays, but we believe overall that we can accomplish these items and work with the township consultants to find a better solution. And at this time, we believe that if we are able to table this issue and come back next month to visit these issues and get them all sorted out, I think I'll let our engineering team speak to those specific items, but I believe these are all curable issues that we can handle. And we've also had discussions with management team that this 3,000 square foot restaurant that was on the site plan, it's not an actual public guest. It's only for guests only. It's not a public where people can come in. It's a breakfast area, and there's food and like a bar inside for guests only. So it wouldn't cause additional parking requirements for the hotel with that regards. So it was a misunderstanding, but I'm here to clarify that up. And then it is a 3-story building, similar to the Comfort that's been built. Now we'll have to check on the height requirements if they're exceeding those as well. Originally the proposed prototype from the brand that we got was an EFIS build. And for the concerns of golf balls, we went ahead and spending the extra time and efforts and investment to change this entire building to a brick and stone. And we've done that for our previous properties. We don't mind investing the extra dollars to keep it compact. In terms of the golf balls, errant golf balls coming into the property, we're looking into some sort of netting that can also prevent that from damaging any cars as well. We're gonna find some better solutions as well for that. But with regards to the civil engineering comments, I'll hand it off to Kevin. And also have here our hotel management company team, Brian Fry from Cincinnati, and he's managed a bunch of Hyatt Places all around the country as well, that can speak to experience of who will be managing this asset and what value a Hyatt Place in a hotel and how it's being managed, what value it brings to the community as well. So I'll let Kevin speak and then Brian as well after that.
Okay, yeah, if you have anything to add, quick, and then I'll open public comment, because then I'll bring it back to the board for more specific questions, but
Fair
yeah,
enough.
go ahead.
It's Kevin Royston, Weight Trim, 500 South Saginaw Street, Flint, Michigan. I guess specifically, went through the items. I guess the drainage easements, yes, we plan on taking that into account, rerouting around the site, maintaining the drainage course to the existing basin. The wetlands, we've brought on a sub-consultant that's a wetland specialist, gone out there, done the field evaluation. I've got a draft report that, hopefully tabling this, I'll be able to provide with the rezoning and have a better understanding of what kind of the pieces of the puzzle are there. I guess you hit on the restaurant space, so that was the other concern, and I guess,
The story, the height.
oh, the height, the 3 stories was the other item. So it was 3 stories, and then I have to verify the max height, which was 35 feet or 2 stories currently, but I'll have to verify what the elevation shows on the plans and confirm. So, yes.
Okay.
I'm Brian Fry, 10611 Lauren Court, Union, Kentucky, 41091. I'm the president of Commonwealth Hotels. We're a national hotel management firm with over 60 properties in 14 states. We have managed multiple Hyatt places and Hyatt properties, and I can vouch for what the applicant has said about the restaurant. The restaurant offering in this location, it literally sits behind the front desk. It's just a food service option for guests of the hotel.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm happy to answer any other hotel-oriented questions.
So if there's guests at the hotel, they can have friends come meet them there? Or is it just the guests at the hotel for the restaurant?
Well, you can't exclude friends to meet them there, but the reality of it is that, I mean, we've managed a dozen of these, and you have virtually no outside participation in the restaurant.
Even with a venue like Pine Knob that's close, or people coming to concerts, and I'm just trying to
No, I understand,
see what kind of traffic we're gonna have there.
Yeah, and again, we manage these in multiple markets, and they're not an outside generator. I'd much prefer it if they were. If they were, they would be good for our business, but the reality of it is, it's a very minimal offering. And so because of that, they very rarely generate outside traffic.
You guys mentioned nets. What will the nets look like from the golf course? Like, are we talking like Top Golf, or, I mean, how high are these nets gonna be that you're proposing?
We haven't gone into the height updates yet. We've just been researching different types of nets as of now. Maybe some sort of overlay that's covering cars from that side, but we haven't gotten to that stage yet.
I think what you're saying is aesthetics would be important to us if
Correct,
it
yeah.
came before
So
us.
we
And
haven't
to us
gotten
as
to the
well.
point where
I mean, the golf
something
course has
aesthetic
been there
would
for
Right.
forever, you know?
All right, yeah, I'll just open up a public hearing. I think the public's got some more information. We'll hear what they have to say, and then we'll bring it back up to us. So, we'll open up public comment. That clock's always wrong. What is it?
6:33.
6:32, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak on this case? Anybody online?
I'd like to speak online, please.
Yep, go ahead.
My name is Andrew Mahavelich. I'm an attorney. I represent the Comfort Inn and Suites. We reserve most of our comments with respect to this to the extent that the petition or application is subsequently modified, but I do have some comments, specific comments or questions for today's meeting. First, there doesn't appear to be any analysis or discussion with respect to traffic patterns. I understand there's some discussions as to parking, but as I understand, given the configuration of this site, there's just one exit that goes off Fleming Road to Sashabaw. And the result is that with all the traffic, and particularly two hotels and everybody exiting at the same time or coming in, would create a bottleneck. I'm not sure, whether there's been any analysis or any review. I haven't seen any in the application, but it would seem that would be an important consideration in that I don't think that the traffic pattern or the additional roads or something else can be added. The second comment is with respect to the zoning itself. My understanding is that this parcel, the C1 zoning, is the last left in this area. If in fact it's changed, or even if there's an overlay, that would require zoning to be changed somewhere else, or C1 zoning, which is important to the community in this area, there just wouldn't be any. And with that comment, I would also add that my understanding is that this property has been owned by the current owners for upwards of 8 years. I believe or understand that the property was purchased knowing the conditions, the wetlands, the traffic patterns, the existing zoning at that time. So it's not like something changed over that period of time. Bringing this in, if anything, there's been additional development that has to be considered. Those are the comments I have at this time.
All right, thank you. Anybody else online? One more time, anybody else in the audience? Okay, we'll close the public hearing at 6:35, is it 6:36? Okay, we'll bring it back up to commission. Anybody want to start? Anybody have any additional questions, comments?
I'll just open it up with a comment if you like. I guess, to me, this structure, if it went forward, would be probably in the top 5 largest buildings in the township. I'm just trying to take a quick inventory in my head, but I guess one of my major concerns is gonna be, the drainage and, the wetlands and how that's gonna be handled, so that, the size of that building and how we're gonna, manage the water runoff and keep the, I guess just the capacity of the reservoir that's built for this property, to make sure we're not exceeding anything or ruining the wetlands, so. That's my main comment.
All right, thanks, Ron. Anybody else? Ms. Tully?
Dick, I was wondering, can the change in zoning be approved before we really know what the project is? So that would remain whether the project goes forward or not?
I think that's a great question. I think that from both Brian's and my perspective, the applicant has been very clear from the very beginning what the intent is of what they want to do there, and that is to build a hotel. Obviously, they didn't formally apply for a planned rezoning overlay, although they made every indication at the time of our pre-application meetings that that's what they were going to do to Office Service 2, and then submitted an application from C1 to C3. So I think, from our perspective, I want you to understand some of the confusion we've had about the approach that the applicant has taken here. First of all, we made it very clear that that the property was master planned for Office Service 2, and that to be able to achieve that, they had the option of pursuing a planned rezoning overlay. We thought that was quite clear, and that they had agreed with that. Separate application comes in for C3. Obviously, I recommended denial of that, and they pulled the application. Then we get a revised application to Office Service 2, and still no indication of PRO. I would say, yes, you could pursue that, but I don't want you to, I guess I would be concerned about leading the applicant on from the standpoint that, as it's currently presented, and this is all that we've seen, that what they are doing here is acceptable, because in my mind, it is not. And Mr. Lochran, in your respect, I think Brian showed that aerial photograph, and a portion of their parking lot does appear to be over this drainage basin. So there's a lot of issues here, and there's a lot of other property owners that have an interest in what happens with that drainage there, because if you remember, Arby's went through a great deal of expense to solve that problem, to go through the necessary permit applications, and provided us with a wetland report. It required a township wetlands permit, and we have a wetlands report that indicates that a good part of this site could, a substantial part of the site could potentially be wetlands. In my mind, all this information is pertinent to the rezoning of the property, because we already know what the intention of the applicant is here. So therefore, I mean, I think the downside of proceeding with this at this point is it's a potential indication that what you're seeing here is you think it might be acceptable, and I don't believe that should be the case right now, knowing with all the unknowns that we've presented, I think that are factual in this particular regard, regarding the property. I think that they need to do more homework about what they have purchased here. So I see no harm in tabling this matter. I'm recommending denial, but that's up to you, what you wish to do.
Anything else?
Well,
Judy?
see, there's so many open issues in the material that we got that I found it very difficult to try and evaluate it until there's more information available.
Right. Well, and I don't know if you were provided with the response to my review, but it was all, well, we'll do this at final site plan review. I don't
Yeah.
think that's fair to the planning commission.
Right, a lot of it was pushed off.
Yeah, I don't believe that this is the right thing to do for the community or the right thing to do for the planning commission, for you to be presented with a proposal, which you know what it is. It's right there before you. And yet, oh, we'll solve all these major problems. Major problems. Lack of parking, a wetland potentially, a 3-story building when 2 stories is permitted, building over a pond that other people have access to. I think it's ill-conceived at this point, and they need to spend more time evaluating this and come back with a more acceptable proposal. So I have no inherent, objection to a hotel. We've talked about that here many times. It's just this particular proposal, I believe, is ill-advised and it needs more time.
Yeah, I would think for the petitioner's sake, I've jotted down the main concerns. So if anybody else on the commission had a different concern to add that, I wouldn't want them to spend all the money on these 6 or 7 things and then come back and it's like, oh, well, we forgot about these 3 or 4 things. So I don't, we're talking about wetlands, then where would the water storage be? And where are we accessing the drainage? The parking concerns, the restaurant we've kind of addressed. So, I don't travel a lot, but occasionally I'm assuming this is gonna be where you stay at the hotel and they have the breakfast and brunch buffet open to hotel guests. It's not a sit-down restaurant where a waitress comes and takes your order. Size and mass of the building, that would, maybe be the total overall length of it. What sounds like it might have to reduce anyways to accommodate some wetlands concerns. Traffic report. My other personal objection was I appreciate the styling of the building, all brick and stone, that's great. Just the parapet does, I get it that that's the brand style, but it does look a little bit high and awkward for, the Independence Township community, in my personal opinion. That would be an objection I would add personally, so.
I think aesthetics from the residents on the golf course is gonna be key too. I think, like the optics of the netting or, just the encroachment of the building as far as the view of the neighbors that are there as well, so.
Right. Anybody else have anything additional? Mr. Logren?
So I think I'm just uncomfortable rezoning a property without having a site plan or knowing the use. So I think it's important to know that. For me, I wouldn't consider rezoning if we had no idea what it was. So I'm looking at the site plan when I'm considering a rezoning. That being said, I don't have an issue with the use. I think the building actually looks nice. I agree with some of Commissioner Galley's comments on maybe that parapet, but overall I was kind of, happy with the way it looked. From a scale perspective, I mean, guys, this is Sashabot corridor. I don't necessarily have a problem with it. The Comfort Inn's 3 stories as well. To me, I'm not too concerned with the mass of the building. But having said that, and this is very important, when I look at the site plan, I don't know where your open space is at all. I mean, it looks like it's just all pavement. You're just squeezing something in there that doesn't fit. And, I want to like it. It's just there's not enough green space for me, and you're not going to be able to do it unless you reduce this building quite a bit because you're already short on parking, which is another concern that I know you heard. So I don't want to say, find somewhere else to build this because I like the building. It's just this is a very tough site to squeeze this in here. That site plan just is, to me, that doesn't work just looking at it. So, you're looking for feedback, sounds like you're looking for a postponement. Hopefully, we're giving you some of that feedback, but I think you got a really tough site to work with here, unfortunately. So I like the use, I like the building. I just wish the site afforded you more maneuverability on it.
Ms. Cullen?
And then I bring this up every time a project wants to go in there, and that is we have our own infrastructure problem with the road. You know, it really gets to be a big mess, and I don't know whose responsibility it is. Certainly not these new people, but, it's been a long time and it doesn't really get anything permanently fixed.
You know, like that big pothole at the end right there?
There's a lot of big
That's
potholes
horrible.
there.
Not anymore,
I
it
mean,
just got paved over.
Oh, did they pave it?
Well, just that one
So
section.
it'll be good for 6 months or
Yeah.
In front of
something.
Arby's, that's it.
Yeah.
There is a road maintenance agreement. And, that all the owners are subject to. The problem with all these things, obviously, is enforcement mechanism. They have to do it, but
We
the township
we
has
do it
been-
every year.
but the township has
Oh,
been,
that's who paves it, is us?
has been more active
No.
about doing this since Brian
But-
has become
yeah.
involved in it.
Yeah, we send basically twice a year letters to Culvers and Arby's,
Mhm.
so.
Well, there is a huge amount of traffic on that little road.
Especially with Art and Jake's now. You see a lot
Yeah.
more people going down and taking, to go to the light now than
Yeah.
you did before.
Well, you can't turn left on it.
You're not supposed to.
Anywhere before that light, so it's kind of a mess, man.
Anybody else have anything to add for the petitioner for clarity or a motion? More thoughts?
I'll make a motion, I guess, since the petitioner asked to table this anyway. I guess I'll move that we take no action and table this for the applicant to be able to prepare better for a next meeting at his choosing. And with the comments of the board taken into consideration before the next submission.
Mr. Chair. Can we just call it a postponement, that way that it leaves it open-ended? Tabling
Postponement,
goes to
okay.
next month.
Okay, Mr. Ritchie has amended his motion to say postponement instead of a table. Do we, I'll just go ahead and second it since I'm talking. So a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Galley,
Yes.
Mr. Lockren?
Yes.
Mr. Mazza?
Yes.
Mr. Patel? Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Brett Sabadan absent, Ms. Tully, yes.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you, and I think you got some good feedback, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Okay, the second public hearing tonight, PC file 2023-006. Petitioner is Bridgewood Church, 6765 Radley Lake Road, Clarkston, Michigan. They're requesting amended special land use and conceptual site plan approval in order to construct an addition to their current church. Mr. Carlisle.
Okay. This is before you tonight for an amended special land use and amended conceptual site plan. I'm not sure if there was anybody on the planning commission when this was originally approved. In a little, I think about 20 years ago, for Bridgewood Church. It's at the southwest corner of Radley Lake and Ortonville. It's on a site of 12 acres. The church originally purchased this with the thought of expanding. I think the original church was 15,000 square feet. But at that time, and if you even go into the planning commission minutes, you'll see that the potential for expansion was discussed with the planning commission back then. The full intent was they bought a site this large to be able to grow, because they anticipated that they were going to be able to grow. The site slopes down to M15 from the rear. If you've driven past there on the southern part and the southeast corner of the site heavily wooded. And so in our reviews of these, we have encouraged them to retain that heavily wooded area, which they have done. There will be some slight removal because of expansion of the septic field. But other than that, I mean, they're trying to keep as much of the wooded area as possible. It's obviously a pretty substantial expansion because of their success. It's a 30,000 square foot addition to the existing 15,000, and it's basically to build, I think, a 750 foot, 750 seat, sanctuary to add to provide, you know, additional service space for their members. We spent quite a bit of time with the applicant talking about parking arrangement so that they had a good circular arrangement around the building. Generally, our fire departments like on places of assembly to be able to have four-sided access. You know, plus with a building this large, you're gonna have, you know, entryways into various portions of the building from all sides. On the other hand, we indicated to them that they needed to place most of the expansion area closer or towards M15 to not impact the residential areas to the west, and that's what they've done. The amount of parking that they're going to provide does meet our ordinance requirements. It's a little bit more than primarily for service change times. From a special land use standpoint, we really don't see anything differently from the special land use standards than was originally considered for this church. We have a lot of churches in this community in areas that are similarly zoned or are similar in their somewhat rural nature. This being on M15 is even an additional factor why I think the Planning Commission 20 years ago considered approving it as a special land use. And I don't see, from my perspective, I don't see anything different, particularly when it was anticipated at the time that they were going to expand. So from our perspective, the special land use, amendment of the special land use should be approved. All of the dimensional standards for churches, places of worship have been met. I've already described some of the natural resource conditions, which from this plan they are respecting from the standpoint of the advice that they've been given in terms of preserving the natural features. You know, there are fairly steep slopes as you come down to M15. From a standpoint of access, they did inquire, as they did back 20 years ago, whether access could be provided directly onto M15, and MDOT has said no, just as they did 20 years ago. And we have extensive information in the record why that was the case. Nothing's changed. It's because of the proximity to the intersecting roadways, plus, you know, the site distance and the slope of the road. So MDOT has restricted their access to Radley Lake from that standpoint. I think there are other items that they're going to need to supply. One of the things I want to mention to the commission that, to me, when you see a final site plan on this, lighting is going to be very important. We want to make sure that the back side of that building, meaning the west side, has very subdued lighting because that's all residential to the west. The area, you know, close to M15, but, you know, it is a little less of a concern, but still a concern in that part of the township. That's your part of the township up there, isn't it? You live up that area. So anyway, yeah, we want to make sure that they're providing very subdued, understated lighting from that standpoint, just not to create an impact from an illumination standpoint. They'll need to provide a landscape plan, signage plan, and all of that before they are done. I think they did supply some colored elevations. I think the building, using high quality materials, they've done a really good job of trying to integrate the addition with the existing part of the building. got a little interesting little features on the building. I think it's gonna be a very nice looking, attractive, durable building. It's gonna be a big building. It's a large church from that standpoint, but it's on a 12-acre site. So from our standpoint, we are recommending both the special land use and the conceptual site plan approval, subject to some items being addressed before final. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Anything specific for Mr. Carlisle before we hear from the others?
Just to clarify, we will see this, we'll see the landscape plan when they.
Yeah, you'll
come
see
back.
it
We'll
at final
come to
site
us.
plan,
Okay.
yes. Mhm.
Any plans for traffic light or anything at M15 and Radley there?
Not that I know of, maybe Mr. Longhurst knows more than I do, but we have not heard of anything.
Mr. Ritchie?
Has there been any communication on the overall height of the building? That was one of the questions. Seemed like that.
I
overall
haven't,
height.
no, that is a question that needs to be addressed,
Okay.
yeah.
I didn't know if they maybe give you that in the meantime.
No, not yet. They might be able to answer that tonight.
I mean, the building looks very nice. I didn't know if some of those peaks or whatever, exceeded it or not.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Carlisle. Mr. Longhurst, you have some engineering to add?
Overall, a very well put together set of plans, so our comments were relatively minor. Just touch on a couple of highlights here. There's a network of sidewalks that kind of go around the building. There are no pathways in the area for them to connect to out in the right of way, so what they're doing is appropriate there. Vehicle circulation looked adequate, again, with the second approach being provided on Radley Lake Road. That'll be subject to road commission review and approval there. Grading, everything, demonstrated feasibility, didn't see too many major issues with grading. The one comment that we did point out, they've got a sediment forebay kind of in the southwest corner of the pond. The overflow was shown going to the south onto a residential property. As they come back for final site plan, we just want to make sure that they route that through the site and out onto M15 or up to the main detention pond so that we're not inundating neighboring properties there. The septic field expansion, as Mr. Carlisle indicated, will impact the woodland area slightly because the field has to get larger for the addition. They're showing a reserve field in the woodland area. Obviously, that won't get cleared unless the reserve is needed, so it should be preserved for the foreseeable future, but there will be a small impact to create that larger septic field for the site there. This is obviously well and septic. I believe the fire marshal has provided a letter indicating that they need to look into fire suppression or fire coverage for that, so that'll be something that'll need to get ironed out as the project moves forward. But no, other than that, it was pretty minor. We're recommending approval as well.
Anybody have anything specific for Jason before? Okay, thank you. He mentioned the fire letter just briefly. It does have two requirements on there for size and water flow capacity for a suppression system due to the size of the area. The other note is that they reviewed for circulation and fire access, and everything is satisfactory other than that in the fire letter.
Brian, I do have one question for Jason.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to figure out the septic field. It looks like it's pretty treed in that area.
Yeah, there's kind of a cleared area where the field exists today, and then they're expanding it to the west, so that this outline here kind of represents the area that's cleared for the
Okay.
septic field. that's
And
gonna
we'll be
remain.
going in
So
there.
then this is the
Okay.
area they're expanding, so you can see they'd be.
Yeah, I don't even see the
clearing
cleared
a little
area, but okay.
bit. Yep, and then the reserve up here would have impacts if it's ever
Thank you.
needed.
Thank you.
Okay, petitioners, if you want to give a brief summary before I open up public hearing.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Jeff Parker, Jeffrey Parker Architects. I'm from 855 28th Street in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We mostly help churches, and so we're partnering, helping Bridgewood Church accommodate the growth that they've had. So overall, I think you've had a pretty good indication of what we're interested in doing. Bridgewood Church doesn't have any midweek education programs like schools or preschools or that kind of thing. They're doing more traditional church stuff in that respect, but the senior pastor and executive pastor are both here if you had questions about what they do in terms of programming, and then also the civil engineer is here. But overall, we're trying to plan responsibly for the number of seats that they would need, and also the parking, so parking doesn't become an issue. So everything should be all in balance. We've tried to create a look for their building that matches the type of ministry that they are, and their interest really is to be a community resource and do things, you know, in a way that makes a difference here. So I think, other than that, I'd really be repeating what you've already been hearing.
Anybody have anything specific for the architect before I open up to the
Yeah.
public?
Maybe to mention the height of the building. The height of the building would stay beneath what the zoning ordinance would allow, but the peak of the sanctuary is about the height of where the peak is for their existing building now. I think.
So similar in height.
Yeah, I think it's 35 feet before I left the board here. So this peak is the highest part of the building, which is 35, and that's about what the peak
That's the
of
existing.
the existing building is here.
Gotcha.
So I just brought that.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have more questions after we hear from the public, so, yeah, thanks.
Okay, all right, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open up a public hearing at 7:02. Anybody from the public wish to comment on this case, just come up, name and address for the record, and we'll hear your comments. Please, sir.
Hi there, everyone. My name's Bill Honey. I live across the street from the church. I'm not real good at public speaking, so forgive me.
It's okay.
I don't have a problem with people worshiping as they choose. So we got a church over here and this church. And now they're wanting to make it bigger and bigger. This is a rural area. And the traffic, anybody that knows anything about M15, it's an absolute nightmare. And everybody's gonna come there. I don't know how you're gonna get all them people out of there with that huge addition. That bothers me, quite frankly. It just, I think it's overkill. I don't have a problem with them people, you know, doing what they wanna do, that's fine. But, and I heard there was a thing about, like, they don't do it a lot, but there's times they have, outside parties, whatever, basketball, there's speakers going. And in my yard, it's quite annoying. It's overbearing is what it is. They don't do it a lot, though, I'll give them credit for that. But those type of things are bothersome to me and my other neighbors. Only one other one showed up that I'm aware of, but that's my concern. I mean, M15, you talked about out here the roads. I mean, it's gonna be ugly, I think. I know Sunday is not the same amount of traffic as there is during the week. But with that amount of extra parking spaces they're talking about and the added space, I think it's gonna be a problem. I just wanna voice my opinion. Let you know I'm totally against it. I mean, you guys do what you gotta do, but I don't think it's a good idea.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for letting me talk.
No problem. Anybody else in the audience wishes to comment on this?
Kristen Lynette Johnson, 8997 Nortonville Road. We're the property just south of the church. I do have some concerns. I have some concerns with the water overflow. We already get most of the trash from all the northern properties come down into our culvert. We're cleaning that out once or twice a month. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about they don't have any programs going during the week now for schools and things, but Does that mean they're not gonna have? You expand a facility like this, and now you're open to, ability to have a lot more people, a lot more of the time. Are we gonna restrict that for them? I mean, if they're saying they don't have that now, I wanna know, are they gonna have that later on? I like to be a good neighbor. I don't have any problem with Bridgewood. As the gentleman here said, you know, there's some noises and things going on, that hasn't affected us, but as a good neighbor, just south of the church on their property, there's a large pile of concrete, probably from the first construction. It's been sitting there, I've been there over 2 years now. Pallets, 2 years worth of pallets just sitting there, rotting away. I mean, is that gonna be the dumping spot for the next build? I'm concerned about that, because as a good neighbor, you don't leave that stuff for the other neighbors to see, and we do see it. Trash pickup, there's a lot of trash in the woods there. You know, we try to keep our property clean, we try to pick up the trash that's on our property. We appreciate if everybody does the same. And traffic is gonna be an issue. May not be an issue now, but, you know, M15 is not getting any less crowded. And if they start having some weekday types of things, which I presume they probably will at some point in time, this is a growing church, I think it's gonna be a problem. And what are we gonna do then? We're gonna widen M15 to accommodate the church? I mean, that's a, you know, I think that's something we all need to think about. You know, it's things like this that, that concern me, and I think my wife has a few things she'd like to.
On the water flow, on the retaining ponds, right now, our driveway that's close to the property line, we've got a large pipe that helps move that water along. We thought the meeting started at 7. We didn't realize it started at 6, so you're probably gonna have to repeat yourself, but it floods down there. And I understand that, I do know that some things are coming, quote, south, to the south property. Do we have something definitive or a guarantee that if it floods to where we cannot use the driveway, or we have to enlarge our pipe to, you know, run the water off that's coming down, because it's just the lay of the land, the topography. It comes from the north right on down, and it seems to stop at our property. It doesn't really actually reach Strawberry Lane. So, is there some plan B put in place that if we find flooding takes place, that they will be responsible for either, I don't know enough about that area of expertise. I know drainage is a tricky business, and.
Yeah, I can have the engineer comment on that after the public hearing.
All right, okay, that was it.
Anything else?
No?
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the audience? Anybody online? Oh, sorry, sir.
Good evening.
Evening.
My name is Mark Newsom. I live 9410 Ortonville Road, directly across the street from this thing. I'll give you a couple pictures to review as far as the flooding that everybody's been talking about.
Go ahead.
If you got any questions, let me know. Basically, there is no ditch along M15. The shoulder of M15 is the ditch. If you happen to get a flat on the passenger side of your car during a rain, God help you. I first did this podium deal on October 24th, 2002 for the rezoning of a daycare. To me, now, I find it was a waste of my time. Once again, I stood at this podium on July 10th, 2003, for the rezoning of a church. Once again, I feel that I have wasted my time. Now this evening, I again stand on this podium. Please don't make me waste my time. Back in 2003, we were told they wanted to build a church that was going to be 15,000 square feet and have 69 parking spots. When it was finished, it was 20,000 square feet, and today there's 172 parking spots. I was invited to a private, not private, but it was a meeting for the neighbors to get our ideas on this expansion. I was told that they wanted to have 450 seats and add 12 to 15,000 square feet. Tonight I'm here because less than a month after that meeting, I found out they wanted 750 seats and 30,000 more square feet for a total of 50,000. The plans were drawn up for a larger expansion as I was being talked to. I was being lied to, if they like to admit it or not. I know how long it takes to draw plans. Let's take a moment to discuss the positive impacts this church has had over the last 20 years. That's done. Now let's take a look at the negatives. There's more traffic. Grant you, the largest majority of this traffic takes place on a Sunday. But this is something that's unique to a church. Personally, I take the traffic spread out throughout the day and throughout the week instead of one day a week. But the major problem with the traffic is leaving the church and going north on N15. It takes longer period of time to go north because you have to cross the traffic. Did you realize that if you have 170 cars leaving this church non-stop and one car left every 10 seconds for 6 cars a minute, it still takes 28 minutes to empty that parking lot? If you could get 8 cars on the N15, it still takes 21 minutes. Plus, you have the other cars coming in. So it's nonstop traffic from roughly 8:30 until at least 12:30, 1 o'clock because of incoming and outgoing. When this church was built with the 69 spots that have now become 172, nothing was ever done for the water detention. It was planned for 69 spots with a certain amount of detention. Nothing was ever done. So yes, there is a water issue, as you can see. They paved Radley Lake Road. All the water comes down Radley, goes right down M15, and it doesn't go into an actual ditch until just about their septic field. And then it crosses the road onto these people's property. Also, whatever happened to 1 tree per 8 parking spots? They put all these additional parking spots in, but I don't know if you guys knew about it, but there was no procedures followed. There isn't one parking curb in that whole parking lot unless you actually park against a sidewalk. And you can tell it if you look. One thing unique to my property that isn't unique to anybody else are headlights. The church elevation is 20 feet higher than my house. When they added on to the parking lots, they added to the south. And my house was farther to the south. So what happens, especially in the winter time, everybody hits the remote starts, all the headlights come on, and my house just lights up. And it shouldn't happen that way. I have to keep my blinds closed, or literally, you can't see TV. I mean, it's just, you're lit up. there is no privacy. And speaking of wintertime, do you know how many times a snowplow has to go up and down the asphalt to plow that parking lot? I could tell you, I could count it, because in my living room, I can count every time that plow hits. And if I'm sleeping at night, on a Saturday night, early Sunday morning, they have to prep the lot for Sunday service. There is no sleeping after 3 a.m. Have we ever even thought about how much salt this added parking lot is gonna add to the system, to the groundwater, to this detention pond? It takes I was in the maintenance business for 30 years. It takes 2.3 pounds of salt for your average parking spot. So currently, the 172 spots, they are using close to, if you add in the sidewalks, well over a ton of salt every time they have to apply it. How many times do you think they apply salt in winter? It changes winter to winter, but it's a lot. And like everybody mentioned, they currently allow the youth on Wednesday nights to have outside gatherings in the nicer weather. They use a DJ and amplified sound during these gatherings. I think everybody has been nice about it, but I don't know if they knew about it. But special land use of churches, section 8.13, article A, line 2, no outside amplified sound for churches. You can ring bells all you want for service. No outside sounds, amplified sounds. Let's take a look at the expansion that's being requested. They're wanting to add basically 450 seats and 30,000 square feet for a total of 750. Is it truly needed? Bridgewood has another church in Goodridge that was recently renovated. Why wasn't this church expanded to help accommodate the overflow at this church? Is the Goodrich Church going to close if and when they do expand this one? And if you do a search on Bridgewood's own website for looking for a church within the zip code of Bridgewood, there's 6 more churches within a 10-mile radius. How many we need? And that's all the same denomination, by the way. Everybody wants to always go to the newest church, but it won't always be the newest church. What's going to happen if and when something happens to Bridgewood Church? How do you get rid of a 35,000 tall, 50,000 square foot vacant building with 750 people seating in a residential area? It's almost unsellable. Currently, there's a whole lot more clientele that could take that building the way it is, instead of expanding. Speaking of clientele, this church is located 1 mile south of the township line. The other day, on a Sunday, I wanted to see how many cars actually attended this church. So all I had to do was get a cup of coffee and sit in my driveway. There was a half dozen cars in the lot when I started counting cars. When I finished, 119 cars entered the parking lot for the 9 o'clock service. Out of those 92 cars, out of those 119 cars, 92 of them, or 78%, came from the north, away from our heart of our township. 3 cars came from the west. 24 cars came from the south. I fully understand that this is not scientific. It was only for one service, and you truly cannot rely on this as an overall thing. But it sure does make a person think how much tax we are actually giving away, tax-free, for our township to another township. We've given away the house, let's not give away the farm. Whenever you have a large parking lot alongside a highway, in this particular case in a residential area, It's gonna attract a lot of people to this parking lot. I see it. This parking lot currently gets used by a lot of delivery companies, UPS, FedEx, and even my own mail carrier uses it. Cargo companies exchange loads back and forth. People take their lunch breaks there. I'm sure there's some illegal activities even take place. There's cars parked there overnight. It's a drop-off point for groups that are going to Pine Knob. You get divorced or separated parents doing the kid exchange. The list goes on. But one thing is truly for sure. You got a lot of unwanted people where they shouldn't be. If at all possible, I'd also like to see something, if something is done, with the landscaping, or mention something to the landscaping company about using your woods as a facility. They wear fluorescent vests. Somebody's got to go to the bathroom, they head to the woods. It's very obvious. It's not like I'm trying to look. All I have to do is look out my picture window. I have nothing against churches or religion. I attended church for many years and was brought up to believe that religious facilities stand out as beacons and anchors in our communities. They are there for the young and the old, the rich and poor, the weak, the strong. I feel that Bridgewood has let this community down. They seem to be more of a customer-based church than a community-based church. When you have a coffee bar and sell merchandise in your church, you become a retail shop. I'll leave that there. There are so many things that wouldn't cost any money that this church could have done over the 20 years. That could have benefited them, it could have benefited the people around them, the neighbors, the community. The biggest one that comes to mind is the Adopt a Highway. It's in my front yard, the sign. It's gone vacant numerous times as they've been there. I mean, it's like cleaning up your own yard and getting recognition for it. I don't. Number two, a blood drive. I've never seen in 20 years a blood drive.
Can I interrupt you for one moment?
Yeah.
Do you have a gauge on how much longer you're gonna be up? Just, I'm trying to get a gauge for the meeting.
2 pages more? I went through 3.
Can you try and summarize them? I mean, there's 6 or 7 based on the parking lot. Okay, we get it, the parking lot's big. Trash, water retention, you know, the anecdotal story is important to you, yes. But accusations of people in the woods and such, you know.
Accusation? You want pictures? Come on. It happened last week.
I'm not saying it did or didn't. I'm just, can we keep it pertinent to the discussion of the addition? Is all I'm asking.
1 second, please. Okay, on their prints, I don't see anything for any kind of green future. I mean, I know that this is not some kind of finalized thing, but I don't see anything for electric cars. I was curious if they might be doing that. I mean, if that happens, we're probably gonna get some after-hours stuff that, do they have any other plans if this doesn't go through? And if so, you know, have they asked their parishioners or whatever you wanna call them, that, is there another option, such as a 3rd service on a Sunday, another day of the week? I mean, any of them would take care of the problem. That's the first expansion. I know on their drawings that they were talking about, it's the 45 on the parking lot, on that one left-hand corner at the bottom over there. They have to take almost 30 trees, 12 inches and larger, out of there for the parking lot. Currently, the septic field where they would have to go is almost fully wooded. I don't know the photograph that you're looking at, how long ago it was taken or whatever, but it's what they gotta cut. So I know for a fact they're cutting at least 50 trees down for this expansion. And, but yet everybody says no. I know the intent of the special land use ordinance is to have something out of the ordinary in an area not meant for such a thing. Keeping that intent of the land and the surrounding areas normal and not hurting the values. If anybody wants to admit it or not, if this goes through, the property my value will be affected and the surrounding properties. I don't care what a report says, it's gonna affect the value. Special land use is not meant to significantly alter existing or intended character or the aesthetics, the noise, the glare, the air quality, the drainage, or the traffic and property values. Half of those that I just mentioned are gonna get affected if somebody likes to put a Band-Aid on it or not. This church will significantly alter the natural environment of the land. Over 75, almost 80% of it will be developed. You can't build a 35-foot tall church as big as a football field, having covered and having several football fields of parking lots surrounded it, and say that doesn't hurt the aesthetics of the surrounding land. I hope I didn't waste my time. I hope I didn't waste your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything
Can I show you one more thing real quick?
additional to add? Yes, quickly.
Purple was the original church. Yellow was the original parking lot. Sorry. And this red was added without any drainage issues being considered. Currently, if they develop it the way they want to develop it, all the blue will be what land they own is undeveloped. This is what falls within the perimeters of the setbacks. That's how much land they could actually have left to develop. Nothing. They are literally putting 10 pounds of church in a 5-pound bag. Once again, thank you.
Sir?
Thank you.
Your pictures.
I do have one question on the drawing that if I could ask.
Anybody else in the audience wish to comment? Briefly, please.
Stephen Anderson, 9260 Tortonville Road. I'm just right down the hill from the church, but I can see it from my front yard for sure. Just a couple things. I don't see an issue with it at all. Number one is the traffic. It's just a Sunday. I mean, it's one day a week. We got 15,000 cars a day, goes up and down in 15. I hear the noise from my house. 7 a.m. till 9 a.m. I'm waiting for maybe a minute or two to pull out on M15. There's not going to be 15,000 cars coming out of the church. It'll be maybe 500. So the traffic issue on a Sunday, that's just complaining, in my opinion. The noise issue for the people outside and the kids, I heard it sometimes, but it's just joyful. It's kids playing, having fun. It's all during the day. It's not at nighttime having fun. Again, it's just complaining, and I don't see any issue with that at all. The water. Okay, now, 3 years ago, I know that my yard flooded, and I actually saw my little bridge I have made to go to my mailbox. I saw it floating, and it freaked me out. So I went out to investigate. Drove up the hill. The retention pond at Bridgewood Church was not even halfway full. There was, probably could have caught all the rain in the rest of the whole valley where we lived to fill that thing up. It was not overflowing from there. It was coming down from the ditches. So the following year, 2021, the road commission came through and they blew out everyone's culvert from on top of the hill by Independence, Elementary, all the way down, all the way up past Riley Lake Road. They scooped out everyone. They wrecked my mailbox too, another personal issue, but they scooped out all the ditches. They cleaned out all of the culverts. They did everything all the way up the hill, including, Mr. Newsom's yard too. So all that was happened, that's handled by the road commission. So the water didn't come from Bridgewood Church. I thought the same thing, but it did not come from there. And also to answer to Mr. Johnson about the water coming into his yard, that's where the way the road commission is actually, that's the way it's routed. It goes to my neighbor and Rick hooks it 90 degree and dumps out in his yard there, unfortunately. So if he's got a complaint, that should be the road commission, not, any fault of this church at all. And, I mean, I just think that there's a lot of things that, are just not true. Like cars there overnight, there's not. I don't see any cars there. There might be someone there that maybe, parks or leaves a car to share a ride or something, but they're never there overnight. The lights in the church, they're on all night. I don't see them from my house. I don't have any issue with that. And property values. I mean, I don't think it's gonna affect the property value one bit. I think it's gonna actually make it better because you're gonna drive down the road and see this beautiful building, versus some of the things from the yard you can see from some of the neighbors. Be honest. That's gonna wreck my property value more than the church will. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else in the audience wish to comment? Anybody online? Okay, we're gonna close the public hearing at 7:32. I don't know, I guess we can start with drainage. A lot of the neighbors were talking about drainage. Pardon me, ma'am, we closed the public hearing. Without knowing the exact specification of their ponds and drainage, obviously you've looked at the engineering, the ponds will handle their parking lot. I mean, is this an M15 ditch road drainage problem as the last speaker had stated? I mean, you want to give your general thoughts on that?
Sure. So obviously the design is still very preliminary, but what our letter kind of points out and what they're gearing up for is the stormwater management system is going to be designed to Oakland County standards. So they've got to detain all of the, site drainage. The outlet to the M15 right away. So MDOT's also going to be involved. But basically what they're doing is they're capturing, collecting, storing all of that water and discharging it out to the right of way as if the entire site was grass. So they have to bring it down and restrict it to a certain amount based on, again, Oakland County and MDOT standards for what's currently going on out there. I can't really speak to the right-of-way drainage because I haven't studied that to know what's going on with culvert stitches and everything out there. But obviously all of the pavement and everything, all the improvements within the right-of-way are draining into the ditches undetained and then flowing through culverts. And typically those culverts aren't sized to convey the largest frequency storm event. They're usually 12 inches or smaller. So the ponding and everything that people are commenting on, I would expect to see, but again, I haven't studied it to know if the church drainage or the right-of-way drainage is the culprit of what's going on out there.
Yeah, and I actually know personally the two property owners directly west of there, so I've been up there lots of times in storm events and whatnot, and I think one of the speakers mentioned Radley Lake Road is a waterfall into the middle of an M15 and down, so that, I mean, to me, that's not parking lot runoff, that's the way they developed, the road commission developed that M15 hill. Anybody else have any questions on?
A little bit of it is.
To the driveway?
What's that?
Like to their driveway?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the good that Bridgewood does in the community is immeasurable. So Pastor Kurt and Sean they do a phenomenal job, and they do help a lot of families out, a lot of good people there. But my concern would be, I live right up down Radley, is traffic. If they had 750 spots, is it gonna get busier during the week? Is there gonna be concerts indoors, and is there gonna be a lot of traffic throughout the week or Saturday or Sunday? I think that intersection there where Radley hits M15 needs to be addressed. It can back up for quite a ways. It's hard to get. I mean, you guys know, you've been pulling out of there. I'm all for it, what you guys wanna do, 100%, I think it's great, but I think that, you know, something needs to be addressed with the traffic there for sure.
Yeah, and my comments on knowing the two people up there, that the apron coming off of M15, is there plans to repave that with the expansion and the improvements of the parking lot, or is that just county responsibility?
Township paid that.
Township paved it?
Just recently?
No, it was back when the church, during Mr. Hill's term, he paved it.
I mean, is there any
And
plans?
the Bradley was so bad, we used our funds to have the road commission pave it.
Was that, I guess, I think I remember that story where the dirt was washing out into the road and
Yeah.
everything, so it's
And
causing
really
other,
washboardy, so.
it's
we
causing
paved it
other
up to the
safety
point.
issues, so.
And with the expansion, I mean, at least currently, there's not plans to approve that on the expansion drawings?
Well, we'll see when the plans go to the road commission.
Yeah, so there is gonna be a traffic study done and
Well,
whatnot,
there'll be
Review.
review, sorry.
Yeah, there will be review by the road commission. Whether or not a traffic study is requested or warranted, I think has not been determined yet. And I don't know if they can speak to any preliminary feedback from that.
I have already submitted these plans to the road commission, just to see if they had any feedback in terms of what we were doing. Like we heard earlier, they said no to having the additional driveway coming out onto the highway. They didn't see an issue with the other areas because of the time of day that the church runs. So anyway, that was just their preliminary look at it. We'd want to run it past them again, certainly. But we created a portal to submit drawings so that we could have, get their feedback back and forth on that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
So what I'm hearing is, and MDOT controls M15, right? And that's a non-starter? I mean, has it been fully explored?
In terms of what?
Access off of M15?
Yeah, I mean, it was explored in 2000, and I think it was explored again.
Yeah, it was.
Because we had the discussion about that at our, our review level with the applicant. They did go to MDOT, and MDOT again said no.
So they have certain warrants that are exceeded? I mean, is it black and
I
white?
think it's
Is
a
it?
function of sight distance from the intersection and the elevation, isn't it?
Yeah, the topography of the
There's a
road
hill.
and the distance from the
Yeah.
intersection.
Yeah.
It
I mean-
was a firm no, it wasn't, they didn't even.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I think-
But
No, go
because
ahead.
they were a church, it wasn't the kind of no that you often hear that's a firm no. It was a no.
No, I understand. I mean, to me, it seems like Radley Lake is just not the answer for 100% of the traffic. And that's my concern with it. It sounds like it has to be. It's just, when I look at it, and I'm a layman here, but it just looks like it would be better for traffic overall to come off on 15. If that's the answer, that's the answer. That second access off Radley, though, will there be paving, because I think it's dirt
Yes, that-
west of there.
yeah, that's
So,
what I was asking.
so would there be a requirement, and I guess this is our COC to weigh in on that, but do we anticipate that would be paved west of where the current entrance is?
I would think so, and I think it, regardless of whether the road commission requires it, I think when the final site plan is submitted, that's certainly something that you could require.
At least more paving on the shoulder areas. That area still does collect a lot of gravel and dirt in rain events. I guess a comment on the second entrance. I mean, it, probably me included, go a little too fast on M15, but I mean, most people probably travel on average of 60 miles per hour coming down that hill. And I don't know if a second egress answers any problems whatsoever. Because you come down, you know where the main roads are when you're driving M15, and everybody tends to, okay, that's on my radar, I'm slowing down. You're not necessarily slowing down for a random next entrance, I guess, would be my thought on that. I don't think it would improve safety conditions whatsoever.
Do you guys have plans for anything else during the week, or is it just Sunday, or what do you have? You have Sunday services, Wednesday night, and then you guys do the Easter
We do not have any plans for anything that would be out of the ordinary for a church to do. So Sunday is our primary. We do multiple services already at that location. We do have a second location north in Goodrich. That location is filled up as well. So we can't dictate to people which location they have to go to. We did remove over 100 and some people out of that location north to the other location. But nothing that would be out of the ordinary that we would do right now. We just have Sunday primarily, Wednesday night we have student stuff and some smaller kind of class options for people. And that's right around 6:45 to 8:15.
What's your thoughts on the traffic coming out of Radley there?
Yeah, you know, it's a fair issue to talk about. Again, our intention when we originally got the site, we wanted to make sure we were clear from the very beginning that we did want to expand. That was talked about. That was always the plan. And then it was always our desire to try to get, you know, something onto M15. We thought that that would be very, very helpful for the church. So we've done everything in our effort to try to make that happen. And at this point in time, no issues. You know, from an expansion standpoint or from having to do more services is really irrelevant because it's the same amount of people going to be coming in, whether we have 6 services or we do this expansion. You know, everything's still, we have several law enforcement that attend the church. I know I have been a part of other churches, not this church, where we had assistance from police to get traffic during those exit times. I don't know if that's an option. We would definitely be open to doing whatever we have to do to make it conducive for everybody involved.
Name and address for the record.
Kurt Demoff, 3219 Allen, Hortonville, Michigan.
Thank you. Anybody else on board? Any questions or comments?
I just want to make one comment about M15 is a state road, so does the county really still control that, or does that have to come from the state? Is that maybe why the county's not weighing in, because it's not really their road, or?
They've got MDOT for M15, and then they've got the road commission for Radley Lake. So they've
Okay.
got 2 permitting agencies for their frontages.
So it's still MDOT has to make the decision on anything that happens on M15, whether there's a light or a
Correct.
left turn lane or anything like
They've
that.
gotten worse every year,
MDOT.
just to deal with,
Right.
yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. It's probably worse for this location that it's MDOT versus road commissions.
Question one of the speakers brought up, the front parking lot being elevated above. I mean, have you seen final landscape plans for this, or it's all preliminary?
No, and that's something.
We could
that would
add
be
some
required,
screening
yeah.
across the front
Mm-hmm.
to shade some lights.
Headlight screening should be pretty simple to take care of with landscaping, I would think.
A fence feature to break it up with mixed
Right.
evergreens or something.
Some bushes, absolutely, that would, taller bushes,
Pardon me?
taller bushes along that entire curb line.
Nice screening, landscape, so.
Yeah.
Who are you? Are you the landscaper?
No, sir. My name is Michelle Spencer. I'm the engineer on the job. I'm from Powell Engineering, 4700 Cornerstone Drive. I did want to, there was some concerns about drainage. I did want to put, just let you know that, yes, we are picking up all of the paving. We are actually picking up on a lot of additional current areas that are running off-site, specifically to the south. We are picking all of that up, and as Jason shared from the engineering review, what we're going to do is we're going to add another catch basin that allows all of the overflow to not happen to the south in case the basin surprisingly got filled up, but it would go then run into the basin along M15. We do also have more than enough storage here, because I'm assuming the MDOT is going to require more storage than agricultural runoff. So I am taking that assumption, having worked with MDOT a lot. As for the road commission for Oakland County, the double entrance is definitely going to help. We are adding under 200 additional spaces from what currently exits the church. All of those currently exit on the east entrance onto Rattley Lake Road. And there is a decent amount of gravel going to the other entrance. I do expect the road commission to request some sort of paving or something to that other entrance. I did, however, taking that into account, all of the right-of-way water from Rattley, which is currently traveling down Rattley to M15, we are having to pick up though, because currently it's swaled to the shoulder or ditch line along M15, and we are picking all of that up and storing that on site as well. So we should see a massive improvement when it comes to drainage for the site overall.
Yeah, I think that's where the big runoff comes straight down that hill, and
Yeah.
it picks up gravel along the way in the unfinished shoulders. So if that is plans to improve that, I think that'll greatly help the
Absolutely.
downstream. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
So what are we approving tonight? What's the next step if this does pass?
You're approving the amended, you are being asked to approve the amended special land use and the conceptual site plan,
So the next step would be
final site plan.
final site plan, not preliminary.
Correct.
I make a motion to approve it. Spelled out.
We just need to say the file name and what the.
Number 2023-002, miscellaneous zoning ordinance text amendments, revision to section 1402.
Oh, you're in the wrong one. Number
Next
2
one
up there.
Oh, 2, I'm sorry. That's the one that you got rid of.
He's gonna sneak it in there one way.
Yeah, there you go. See what I tried to do? All right, PC file 2023-006, Bridgewood Church. Requesting amended special land use and conceptual site plan approval in order to construct an addition to Bridgewood Church. I'd like to, motion to approve.
Motion, we have support.
I'll support.
Discussion, can we just add to, comments of the board, the comments on drainage, and obviously the reports from our engineers and consultants?
Yep, I guess that's my
Accept the amendment.
wish as well. But, comments, that, taken by the consultants and everybody.
Mr. Mazza? Is it okay to add that to the motion, the comments of all the engineers?
Absolutely.
Still support.
Still support? Okay, roll call please, Ms. Tully?
Mr. Galley?
Yes.
Mr. Lockren?
Yes.
Mr. Mazza?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Chairman Savadan absent, Ms. Tully, yes.
Okay. Next item, regular minutes of April 13th, 2023.
I motion for approval of the planning commission minutes of
April 13th, 2023.
April 18th, 2023.
Can I add an amendment?
Yep.
Page 5 of 6. Commissioner Lochran expressed her concerns. Can we have that switched?
We could, but
His
we don't
concerns?
usually. But if it's bothering you, we can.
It's bothering me.
Sure. I'll support Ms. Tully's motion with Mr. Lockgren's amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, minutes are approved. Consultant reports, master plan update.
Yeah, I actually have just a couple of things. Master plan update, next week is the chamber gathering here.
Time?
Yeah, I believe it's fine.
5 o'clock. You, I think, received notification of that.
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet.
It's in here. It was mentioned at the last board meeting, but 4 to 6, right?
Yeah, 4 to 6, excuse me, 4 to 6,
What day?
next Thursday,
18.
here.
So
It's
that's the
gonna be-
meeting, or are we having a meeting
It's gonna be
afterwards?
more of an informal type of approach, because that's the way they do these things with the chamber. So there will be, just a display set up, there'll be some interactive type of boards and stuff, where we ask people certain information. We've invited both board members and planning commissioners to attend if you choose to. It's not required, obviously, but it'd be nice if you could. But it is from 4 to 6 next Thursday. So that's.
There's no like meeting afterwards or anything, it's just 4
No,
to
no,
6?
nothing, yeah,
Okay.
that's it. I think that will conclude our public participation, and now, I mean, it's, Megan's in the process of drafting a draft plan for your, to begin, for your deliberation and your consideration. So we had to conclude, we had to, finish up our public participation to get moving forward with that. The second thing is, in June, we'll have the proposed ordinance amendments to come before you for the chicken regulations. So,
Class 3 animals, correct?
pardon me?
Class
Yeah.
Class 3?
So that'll be before you in June. So those are the two items I had to report.
What I miss with that? Are they,
There was no action taken yet.
No, we were directed to provide a draft regulations. We did write a report, and the planning commission directed us to come back with some specific ordinance. And it's gonna be a combination of some amendment of the zoning ordinance, proposed zoning ordinance amendment, and a general permitting ordinance, which is pretty typical with, when you're asking for, when you're regulating this type of thing.
you said what ordinance, permitting?
Yeah,
You'd have to get a permit.
under the general
Would be the criteria
township
to-
regulations. That way, when you have sort of a general permit, it's a lot easier to enforce violations, because it's issued as a permit. You don't have the the non-conforming rights provisions come into play so much. So that's pretty typical how we recommend doing it for where we've been asked to do this for communities, so.
It would probably tend to rule out the unserious users of it. If you're serious about it, you're
Yeah,
gonna
but
pull
it's
a
also,
permit.
I mean, I think there are very specific standards in the, I'm not gonna call it a licensing ordinance, but essentially it is, so that if those are violated, it's, it's somewhat easier to revoke the permit.
It's a renewable permit too, it isn't like a one-time thing, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have to continuously keep meeting the standard to do it.
You said yearly?
One question
I
on the
think-
master
I think
plan.
that's gonna be-
Would you anticipate, once you have draft language and stuff, would you anticipate a special meeting for it, or a general meeting, or it just depends on business flow?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be 10 on your load. I think we probably would wanna have another joint meeting once we have something that the planning commission's comfortable with. What we've done in the past is have a joint meeting with the township board prior to the public hearing, so that everybody's on the same page. And then proceed with the planning commission having a public hearing and
Okay.
recommending and adopted. The board has to make a decision whether they're gonna adopt the plan, but they have done that in the past, so.
Okay. Is that it?
Yep.
Any other discussion from the board? Anything else to report from anybody?
Except I think I lost a client that Mr. Honey was, I treated his dog, so I think he'll be bringing his dogs.
Yeah, stuff happens. Okay, motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
There's being on the phone.
Motion by Ritchie, second by Tolly to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned at 7:55.
I tried to sneak that in.